again, my little yarnivores and spiderettes, arachnids, and creative types. Hi, Fiber Spider back again with another video just for you. Hello. Hope all of you are doing really well today. I'm doing pretty good because, well, today we are going to be doing some coloring. And recently, I made a post asking if you guys would be interested in me doing some coloring type videos on the channel, and the response was really overwhelmingly positive. I'm delighted because this is another little creative thing that I like to do. Am I good at it? I would say no, but I enjoy it, and that's the point for me. So so today, because I figure that some of you may be interested, but you may not have coloring books and this and that and the other, I thought, let's go abstract. And there is a technique called neurographic art. And it's actually what kind of got me back into the idea of coloring again, because it's very freeing, it's very intuitive, it's very meditative. Now this piece here, I started the other day. I'm not finished with it yet, as you can see, but I really like how it's turning out. And I wanted to show you guys how you can do something similar to this. So this isn't exactly a tutorial per se, it's more of a how to get into the groove of neurographic art. Now, I have a little bit of info regarding the process. I Googled it, so there you go. So neurographic art, apparently it originated in 2014 by a Russian psychologist named Pavel Piskarev. If I'm mispronouncing it, I do apologize. And the process is about drawing lines, which are called neurolines, which represent neural pathways. And by softening the intersections of those lines, we soften the brain's response to stress. So the idea is to bridge the conscious and unconscious mind to, reduce stress, to reduce anxiety, to process grief, to overcome creative blocks. And basically it's about the meditative and intuitive process rather than the abstract results that you can see before you. And I really like it. I dig it because you can just sort of get lost in the sort of meditative quality of what you're doing, and you don't have to think about anything, and yet you end up with something that I think is really pretty. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. So you don't need any fancy materials. If you have them, great. If you don't, that's fine. If you have, a pencil, you can just do it, monochromatic. That's totally fine. I love colored pencils. Yes, I do. And so I do have a set of those. Are they necessary? No, but you can use them. This is supposed to be a very freeing exercise here. So let me show you what I have. Let me scoot this over to the side. So now I've tried a lot of colored pencils over the years. Now these are the Prismacolor Premier colored pencils. I love these, okay? Hashtag not sponsored, not affiliated, but I really do like these because the color layout, it's very smooth, it's very rich, and the lead, it's nice and soft. These are not the Verithins, if I'm not mistaken. Those, the lead in those, it's a bit more brittle, it's a bit harder. These, they're softer. And so if you look for the smooth and rich color laydown, that's what I go with. And you've got a lot of colors to choose from. This is the 72 box. Now, you don't need all of these, not by any stretch of the imagination. This is just one of the 3 tiers. But I wanted to show you what I do have to work with here. So I've got these pretties. And then I've got these. Actually, these are the ones that I've been using for this existing piece that I have. In fact, I've used all of these that are facing towards the camera right now. I've used all of these thus far. And then under here, we've got another tier. left to go, which is by and large more of the earth tones and grayscale. I haven't really used those as much, as you can see. Now, like I said, do you need all of these? Heck to the no, you do not. You know, you can use crayons, you could use crayons, colored pencils, markers, really whatever tickles your fancy. One thing, though, that I would strongly suggest, okay, if you are using colored pencils, to use a good sharpener. Now, this one is by Staedtler, okay? This one I've been using just recently, really like this one, and opens up, you got two little sharpeners in the top there, and the reason why I like this is because, let me show you, there we go, because it is a very solid and robust sharpening gizmo inside there. You do not, I repeat, do not want to use one of the old school sharpeners with the crank on the side. You will destroy your pencils. And if you use an electric one, you're going to burn right through it. You don't need to go crazy when sharpening these. So I strongly suggest use something like this. Very simple, very straightforward, and you will save the lifespan of your pencils by quite a bit, okay? I speak from experience. Now, one thing that you will not need for this exercise is an eraser. Nope. No eraser necessary, because it's not about getting rid of, it's just about adding to. All right, so also, if you want to go, you know, full on, you know, subconscious versus conscience, you know, there are no mistakes. You know, this is about creation and abstract. This is not about looking for something that is perfect. No, this is about freeing the mind and having some creative fun. So, with that being said, we are going to start a new piece today. And so this one, as much as I love it, we're not going to be working on it today. No, we're going to start a new piece. So I started a new sheet already. Where are we? There we are. And so all I did, quite frankly, was I decided to trace the lid of my colored pencil tin. I traced the lid so that I have a framework to work within. And, well, we're going to draw the lines, and then we're going to soften our corner pieces, you know, the intersections, and we'll do a little bit of coloring. You know, we'll just hang out, you and me, and, you know, we'll kibitz a bit, you know? We'll do some coloring together. So, grab your paper, grab your drawing implements, and we shall begin. Okay. All right, so there are a number of ways in which you could approach this. I think that I'm going to do a very organic and abstract kind of deal. You can make it easier by taking, say, a glass and tracing around, making a whole bunch of circles, or use a ruler and go from one end to the other. Me, I like a little bit more of a free, flowy, you know, I'm looking for the word, and I'm having trouble finding the word, but more organic in its shaping. And right now, my pencil, it's not the sharpest that it could be. Really doesn't matter, because we're going to be softening our lines anyway. So I'm just going to start making some random lines. It's not rocket science. It's just going with what your intuition says, do it. So that's what we're going to do. So just going to go from one side of the border to another and keep doing this until I have a whole bunch of fun little intersections to work with. And so and then, as you can see right here, I got a bit of a shaky line. That's quite all right. We can work with that still. You know, I got shaky hands. I know this. You guys should know this by now. And then just making a whole bunch of these. And then, you know what? Do something with this space over here. So let's do another big curvature. and do a nice big sweeping motion. Now right now I am using the black that came in the colored pencil set. You could use a regular graphite pencil, nothing wrong with that. You know what? I think, ooh, you know what? Let's, instead of going from side to side, let's make a cell in the middle, perhaps. Another little neuro pathway there, and then let's do another one right here. Create sort of a diamond shape there in the middle, and then let's bridge this gap over here. Sort of like a puzzle piece, you know, just making the pieces smaller and smaller the more of these connections that we make. And then, ooh, here we go. I'm liking this so far. And you could be as, you know, you could put in a very concerted effort and make this look like, you know, something specific. Like you could do specific shapes like hearts and stars and things. You know, make it look like Tiffany stained glass if you really want to. That's fine, but that's not the goal necessarily. The goal is just to do. That one's going to be a skinny mini right there. Just doing curvatures as I go. Just have fun with that. What do I want to do? I want to do something in this vicinity here. You know what? I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Like that. And then let's do a nice thingamabob here. Yeah, okay. Makes me kind of think of like an ampersand, actually. Let me, you know, one of those and signs. Kind of makes me think of one of those. Okay, and I think we are almost where we want to be. At least I am. You know, you can keep going as long as you want to with this. You know, make lots and lots and lots of these little cells. Because that's sort of how I think of them, you know, sort of like, as far as biology goes, you know, like blood cells or skin cells or that sort of thing, you know. Okay, and then how about one over here? All right, I like it. Now, I'm trying to eliminate some of the bigger patches. So how about something like this? All right. Yeah, I think that will do. I think that will do nicely. The only one that I'm not particularly crazy about is actually this skinny mini right here. However, we can finesse it, you know, we can do things. So the next step is going to be, oh, I gotta sneeze. Excusez-moi. Oh, excuse me. The next step is going to be rounding out all of our junctions, our intersections, and it takes a little bit of time, but it is worth doing because it's a matter of, you know, smoothing out the rough spots in our life. And we've got quite a few of them. Perhaps that's reflective on my psyche, I don't know. But going to do that next, and, well, we shall keep at it. Alrighty. Alright, so since we're going to be going into some finer detail, I'm just going to give my sharpener a little bit of a go here. There we are. Okay, now, As far as softening out our intersections, I sort of like to map it out first and then fill it in later. And so basically every time we have a little intersection where we have a bit of an angle, well, we're just going to smooth that out. Like so. And then we're going to fill that in and then smooth this one out, sort of follow the curvature of the line. And it's sort of like we're making little kites. And then this one here. There. Now we get to do that over and over and over again. And that's part of the fun, part of the appeal, because this is not something you have to think about. Nope. Don't have to think about it. Just do, you know, total autopilot. And see this one right here, it's not that much. We can just smooth it out a little bit like that, and that will totally work for us. And then round these. And just working our way through all of our intersections. See this one, this curve is fine. I'm just going to work on this one here. And then this one like that. Now, am I going to do all of these on camera? No, I don't think so, but you get the idea. And then, let's see, round these out a little. And if you don't want to do all of them, you don't have to. The drawing police are not going to come for you. If they haven't come for me by now, they're certainly not going to come for you, because, you know, I'm sure that there are plenty of serious artist types that would object to what I am doing in my technique or lack thereof. But guess what? It's okay. We're just having fun. Also, very interested to hear from you guys, as always. You know, have you heard of neurographic art before? If you have you tried it before? You just heard of it. If you have tried it before, what was your experience like? You know, always interested in hearing from you guys. You know, this, I thought, you know, it would be sort of a nice segue into doing some coloring videos. I do have some coloring books, don't get me wrong, but I thought for those of you that might not have them, that this might be sort of a nice segue, you know, into potentially getting interested in this. Many, many moons ago, I did do some coloring videos, but they were, you know, high-speed playback videos, and I liked them at the time, but kind of learned to slow my roll a little bit since then. I was so eager to get from point A to point B back then that I wasn't smelling the roses as much, figuratively speaking. Okay, we got some nice curvatures going on there. So you see essentially what I'm doing. Just smoothing out the points. And the more points you have that get smoothed out, the more it looks sort of like a whole bunch of, well, neural pathways, just like the original creator intended. Me, I think it kind of looks like a spider web, but then again, I'm just being partial now, aren't I? There we are. Of course, you can make these sort of kite shapes, as I've called them. You can make them very dramatic or very subdued. Totally up to you. There you go. And then, once you have all of your little kites, as I like to think of them, once you have all of them finished, well, then you can start filling them in. And does it have to be precise? Nope. Does it have to be pretty? Nope. Because, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something good to say. Does it have to be perfect and precise? No. I do like to go for neatness. Oop. Doesn't have to be perfect, though. Just fill them in. Now, if you're using a marker, like a Sharpie, this process will go considerably faster. But when I have a medium that I'm working with, generally I like to stick with that one medium. Other people, they use watercolors and markers and all sorts of goodies, to do what they're doing. Now, also, once you have filled in your little kite shapes, you can then also flesh out the pathways in between, make them a little bit more robust, a little bit thicker, and flesh them out a little bit more. Smoothing anything out that needs smoothing out. Make them a little bit thicker and easier to work with. Now, of course, yes, I am using black, but if you want to use another color to create your pathways, hey, that's fine too. Me, I kind of like black because to me it reminds me of stained glass. Or, actually any sort of, non-color I think would work really well. Like, anything in the gray family. I think that would work well too. Something nice and sort of nondescript. That's just me personally. All right, so you get the idea for this part. So I'm going to keep at it, and I will meet back up with you when I am done with this, and I'll see you in a bit. You keep at it, and so will I. Okie dokie. So I went over all of my lines and I connected all of my little pathways, and now comes, in my opinion, the fun part. And that is doing all of the little colory bits, and all that good stuff. Now, you can use, like I said, you can use whatever you want to do your coloring, whether it's crayons or colored pencils or markers or really whatever. And as far as the different colors, well, that too is totally up to you. Use your intuition. Me, well, I like making things a little bit difficult for myself from time to time, and so I thought I'm going to give myself a bit of a challenge. Instead of using the gajillion colors that I have to work with, I'm just going to use 3. Yes, I'm just going to use the primary colors. Now, I did a little bit of research based on the fact that I'm using colored pencils as opposed to paints, and I think I found the ones that I'm going to use. So for the yellow, by the way, this is, like I said, these are Prismacolor. So the yellow is going to be Canary Yellow, which is PC 916 for those of you that are interested. And the red is Process Red, which is PC 994. And, which to me, it seems more like a magenta, quite frankly, but, you know. And then the blue is Ultramarine, which is PC 902, just in case if you want to duplicate the results. So I think, you know what, I'm just going to bite the proverbial bullet and try to get a whole neat spectrum of colors just from these 3 and see what I can do, you know. And so the trick with doing coloring, especially mixing of color, is go soft. Yes, go soft, go slow. And the piece that I showed you before, I did go quite soft so that I could get that nice sort of shaded blended between the darker outside edge and then the soft light inside middle bit, you know, layer, layer, layer. That's what I keep hearing over and over and over again. That, you know, instead of doing like with a death grip and trying to get as much color down as possible, as quickly as possible, this is a matter of taking your time and being patient with the process. And so I'm just going to pick one of these completely at random. I'm going to pick this one right here, and I think I'm going to mix the red with the yellow and come up with some sort of an orangey color. That's the idea anyway. So I'm just going to start laying out some color, and I'm going very, very lightly. And what helps actually is if you grip the pencil further away from the point so that there is less pressure on the lead. And it also, I think, forces you to slow down just a little bit. And as you can see, I'm using a very, very, very light pressure. It's very whispery. I feel like Bob Ross here. Just going in very, very lightly. Focusing more on the outer edge first. And then fill in the middle bit, but all the while going very, very lightly. And also I found what helps is actually if you turn your page to suit the direction of your coloring, I do find that that helps. And I do turn my book quite a bit, actually. In fact, I'm about to do so right now. Make it a little bit easier on myself. Like that. And then go in again, just very, very lightly whispering across the page with my color. Just trying to get in sort of a base coat, if you will. Now, there were other reds that I could have used that to me seemed more appropriate, but you know what? I'm going to listen to what Google has to say, and hopefully it will not steer me wrong. I don't know, we'll find out. Because I don't do a lot of blending of colored pencils, to be perfectly frank. You know, usually I just go with whatever the color is straight out of the box. But today I'm feeling a little adventurous, a little bit naughty. Alright, so got sort of a base coat going on there. And then gonna grab my yellow and then do again another very light going over. You know, you don't want to go heavy because initially the heavier you go, the harder it is to layer later, because these pencils are not completely wax, but there is a wax element to them, much like crayons. You know, it's not like working with graphite and it sort of clogs the paper too quickly if you go in too heavy. At least that's my interpretation of it. So I'm just going in nice and lightly, and then I'll layer in some more red, and then perhaps some more yellow on top of that. It's creating a nice warm color here. And then the color that I want to emphasize, whether it is the red or the yellow, that will be darker around the edges. That's just me and my personal preference. There, so this layer is just about done. Now, also, admittedly, my lighting could be better than it is, but, you know, we make do with what we have. Right now, believe it or not, I'm actually laying in bed. This is most comfortable for me, definitely more comfortable than sitting at the kitchen table. All right, and then we will go back to the red and keep building up our layers. All right, so back to the red. Again, going in like a whisper. Nice and lightly, just smoothing the colors. Blending as we go. Now there are also some colored pencils that are blending pencils. To me, it looks sort of like a white, off-white pencil. Honestly, I don't think I've ever used one. And if I have, it probably wasn't in the intended way that it was supposed to be used. I am very, very much a novice when it comes to these. I will be the first to admit. But they're fun. I enjoy them. So I'm going over the center lightest and focusing mostly around the perimeter. Part of me likes to think of this as sort of like making jewels. You know, this is not quite a tiara or a diadem, but, you know, hey, we do what we do. And then just building up our color. Now also I know that to me in person this is fairly colorful, but of course on camera it translates a little bit differently. I get that. But let me show you a little bit closer. And then I'm going to go in with the yellow a little bit more. With a little bit of a heavier hand. Especially around the edges. Now, another thing that I have considered and thought about as of recently is branching out into watercolor pencils, something that I have not tried before. I've used watercolors before, but never watercolor pencils, and that could be an interesting medium for me. You know, using watercolors, I did rather enjoy, much more so than oil paints or acrylics, because I found that the ability to blend with watercolors was generally easier. You didn't have the stinky aspect of the turpentine and the oil paints, and with acrylics, well, they dried very, very fast, and I found them difficult to work with, especially if you're trying to do any sort of blending. But watercolors, I rather liked. They did have a slightly unforgiving nature about them. You know, if you made a mistake, well, you kind of had to work with it. Okay, and I'm going in a little bit heavy with the yellow right now. And I'm also smoothing out the previous bits as I go. Trying to get a nice rich color here. Trying to anyway. Like I said, you know, as far as blending, was never quite my forte, but you know what? I'm trying something new. And I thought, you know what? Let's do it together. You know, if you're going to be brave, you're going to try something new with me, I'm going to try something new with you. There. And then I think I'm going to go in one last time with the red. So that's what I've got at the moment. But yeah, I think I'm going to go in with the red a little bit more, try to make it pop even more. So going around the edges most, and then light towards the center. And of course, the red pops a lot more than the yellow. So I would say ultimately this is, as far as orange goes, this is, I would say, more of a red orange than a yellow orange. And with the previous example that I showed you, I didn't do any mixing at all. It was just all one color, just changing the intensity from dark to light as I went to the center. I didn't do any mixing. This one's posing to be an interesting challenge for me. There. I think that will do for this one particular section. I kind of like it, you know. Could I do better? Yeah, with practice and time, sure. But, you know, I'm fairly pleased with the results. It has a very nice, rich tone to it. And so, you know what? I think let's do another one together, and that'll give you, you know, a nice idea as to where I'm going with this. So let's do another one, shall we? Okay. Okay, so I figured the next one, instead of going with blending, perhaps just do straight blue, the ultramarine, to show you my process of just doing a solid one color. So again, going with a very, very light touch, because this is a very brilliant, dark, mysterious blue. Lots and lots of pigment. You know, this is not a sky blue, not by any stretch of the imagination. No, no, this one has depth to it. So, want to go light. Again, as before, focusing mostly on the perimeter of this cell that we have here, and then going to work our way to the inside. However you wish to do it, by all means, go right ahead. Also, ever since I was a kid, I always colored in the lines. I never went out of the lines. Perhaps it was my subconscious way of trying to keep order in a chaotic world, even if you're the age of 5. Alright, going in nice and lightly in the center. Just trying to get sort of a base coat going on here. There we go. And then start darkening up the perimeter a little bit more. No need to go in with a death grip just yet. I like to press down firmly towards the end when I already have most of it established, and then do the remaining blendy bits. Kind of makes me think of a teardrop. Or a raindrop. Whichever. Or a very elongated balloon. Then blend into the light. Trying to avoid any lines of demarcation between light and dark. Want a nice blend. There. And then go a bit darker around the perimeter. And then blend that. I don't know about you, but I'm having fun doing this. You know, usually when I'm coloring, I'm not doing a video, mind you, but you know, this I find to be very, very nice and calming and relaxing. Especially to some music. There we go. And also, I'm sure you've noticed by now is that I don't stick and focus in just one particular spot. I try to go around and over the whole thing. Otherwise, if you get stuck in one spot for too long, you lose sight of the big picture. And in this case, the big picture is the entirety of our cell. And that, I think, looks really quite nice. Quite dazzling in a way. You know, I dig it. All right, and you know what? Just for stuff and giggles, I want to do one more. I just want to do one more. All right, let's do it to it. Okay, because I can't leave well enough alone, and I love spending time with you guys, let's do one more together. This time, yes, I want to do one of my favorite colors, green. Yes. So, you know what? I think I want it to be more of a blue-green as opposed to a yellow-green. So we're going to start with the blue, and I'm going to do this one right here. And going to go in again very lightly with just a whisper of the blue, get a base coat down, and then attack with the yellow and go in with that, because I am very curious how well we do creating secondary colors with our primary colors. The secondary ones are orange, green, and purple, although I don't think I'm going to do the purple for this video, but I couldn't resist. I wanted to do the green with you guys. Okay, and our blue is essentially done. All right, in with the yellow. And let's see what we got here. Like I said, I want this to be a blue-green, so I'm going to focus more on the blue than on the yellow, but I got to get the yellow in there regardless, don't I? Still going in with a light hand, light pressure. There we are, and almost done. There. Okay, back to the blue. going to focus more on the outside edge this time. See if I can create something that looks more like this as opposed to this. This I like, but it doesn't have the same quite pop factor as this one. Perhaps I should have gone lighter in the center in this one. I don't know. I'm learning. It's the beauty and the joy of what we're doing. I'm learning. You know, granted, this one is much more somber and muted in the center, less of a light highlight. But it still works. Okay, and then back to the yellow. Using a fair bit of more force here. The blue definitely overpowers the yellow, hands down. Sort of rock versus scissors, or scissors versus paper. All right. And then once more with the blue, I think. Going for that strong, rich color on the outside edge. Okay, let's see what we got. Well, it's definitely strong. Part of me thinks that perhaps it may be a little bit on the muddy side, but then again, if it is a jewel, it does come from the earth, so, well, there you go. And of course, if you guys have any constructive criticism or helpful hints, I'm all ears. As long as it is constructive, I'm more than willing to listen. After all, I am a human spider, and I've got feelings too. All right, and this one is, I think, about done. Definitely has more of a pop factor and a more dimensional appeal to it than this one, I think. You know, then again, this one is like my first little rendition of blending with colors. This one, it has a lot of depth to it. I do like it. As far as it being muddy, I don't know. Perhaps I think I'm being a little too premature and harsh in my judgments, but I do like it. It has a richness to it that I rather like. Perhaps if I used a different blue or a different yellow, I would end up with different results, but I do kind of like it. Let me give you a better look. I think it's rather neat. Yeah, I do. All right. So, I think that's going to be it for today. Alrighty, my dears. So, that's going to conclude my video today on neurographic art. I really hope that you liked it, and of course, if you did, please give a little thumbs up button down below, because you know that I appreciate your appreciation as always. Let me know what you think. Have you tried it before? If you have, what was your general vibe out of it? Now, what did you think? I just noticed that my curtains are getting in the way. Sorry about that. Um, you know, um, I think it's rather relaxing. I rather enjoy it, and I definitely see myself doing more of this in the future. As far as coloring videos in general, what would you like to see? Is this something that you vibe and jive with, or let me know. I'm always interested in trying new things with you guys, and it was rather fun. I rather liked this video, I must say. And as I mentioned before, there are coloring books that I would like to get into. And maybe we'll do some mandalas. I don't know. I also thought about perhaps doing this as a live stream so that you and I can chit chat while I color. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I need your feedback, so let me know in the comments section. And if you guys are interested, I will put a link to the pencils that I was using today in the description box down below. Not sponsored, not affiliated, but I love Prismacolor. I've used a lot of different brands. I've used, of course, Crayola. I've used, what was it, Rose Art. Oof. Not a fan of Rose Art. I find that the color layout is not very good, and it just generally not my cup of tea. Trying to remember, Craft Smart. I don't know if it still is, but it was the Michaels brand. Again, wasn't too crazy about those. Now these, the Prismacolors, granted, they are not cheap. Okay, I'll be the first to tell you. Now, the set that I have here, I've had for a number of years of using them on and off, and they have served me very, very nicely. And in fact, it's the brand that I've been using for the most part since I was in middle school, just to give you an idea time-wise. And these I really do like. As far as the smoothness, the color layout, the only thing that you do want to be careful of with them, like most colored pencils, is don't drop them, because then you run the risk of cracking the lead and damaging the interior lead, and then when you're sharpening the sharpened point, it keeps falling out. It does happen, so you want to be careful with them. Treat them nicely and they'll treat you nicely. That's my general experience. But I wouldn't say it's the pencil that makes the artist. It's the artist that uses the pencil. I just know what I like to use. That being said, again, I want to thank you so much for watching. Hope you liked it. Let me know what you think, and you know what to do until next time, right? I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay creative, visually, and, whether it's, with yarn or with colored pencils or really whatever. Just enjoy yourself, have fun, and as always, take care of yourselves and each other. Stay safe, stay creative, all that good stuff, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a great day.